And welcome back. We are kicking off things with a conversation with Marcello Blake. He is the Vice President of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And as we had mentioned prior to the commercial break, we are going to be discussing the importance of buying in Belize during this festive Christmas season. Good morning, Marcello.
Good morning, Isani and Marlene. Thanks for having me. A Monday morning.
Yes.
Morning indeed.
You guys do this every week and every day.
That's right. Bringing
Hats
the
off to you.
important topics, right?
Yeah.
So, Marcella, this is such an important conversation for us to have, but as a country, because of the revenue that we generate from being able to buy within the country. But then for the individual spenders, they're just thinking, how can I stretch my money? And oftentimes that means spending it outside of Belize.
Right.
How do you approach the topic, being considerate of the financial times that people are going through?
I think spinning out from the earlier conversation you guys were having, the cost of medical care as an example because of the RTAs. So where does money come from for all of that? You know, when you buy in Belize, you keep your dollars here, creates more business for the community. Of course, you have to pay taxes. So all of that then goes into maintaining roadways and lights and making sure that safety is a priority. And so in doing all of that, there's a cost. So if the money is not staying here and it's going over to the other borders, whichever borders they are, then it's not helping to grow our economy. So I appreciate the stretching of the dollar. What I would counter that to say is then we need to take a look at ourselves internally as a country and decide what those priorities are to be able to encourage that the dollars stay here. So without naming a border, why do we go? Looking at the reasons why.
Why do people go to like Cheddar Mall for a second?
Right.
I mean, people know.
Lower prices is one,
Yes.
for sure. Possibly better service, right? We're looking at the opportunity for a variety, whether it be goods, whether it be service, entertainment. So if all of that's there, how can we then replicate that here? Or at least improve on the products we have here? And I say products and services to ensure that we are encouraging that the dollars to stay here. Again, taxes is one of them. I mean, when we look at the level of taxation in this country and the complexity of it and the various avenues in which the government and others collect, then tax on top of tax on top of tax, and then you end up with very high goods on shelf, very high service charges. So how do you balance it out?
This has been a call from the private sector before, looking at how you can be competitive with the prices that are available across the border or even online, because people can go online and shop now. In order to reduce prices in Belize at your grocery store, at your gift store, whatever it is, it would mean a reduction in taxes in terms of especially importation. Now, that's not, I mean, it's been a cry we've heard before, but it's never been seriously looked at. Can you explain to us how it trickles down?
All right. So the way the build up is that the taxes at whatever level they are continues to add to your cost. So we always say trade license is not a tax, and I don't need to hit on that, but if it's a fee, it's a flat figure. If it's a tax, no, it's dependent on some other element that creates the value of what that license is. That adds on to your cost. So we look at taxes generally saying, okay, business tax, the GST where we're only an agent collecting. So all of those are just add-ons. But there are certain things that go into your regular operations day in, day out that could be considered a tax, and trade license is one of those. Layers and layers, and that's where you end up with the larger value. Now, tax reform is a must, but it's not the end all. I mean, that just helps to create a playing field where now we can compete. It doesn't mean that it's going to guarantee that the dollars will stay, but now, as you said, you're in a competitive arena where, okay, prices in Chetumal, and then you have to weigh the cost of, okay, so when you are going, if we're now competitive, you had to pay a bus fare, you have to eat, you basically have some leisure fun and spending money, and so everything adds up.
Yeah.
And when you add that on to what you spent on actually buying items and bringing them back,
Yeah.
and then hopefully when you're at the border, you actually get charged a little bit of duty, dividing it out and see what the cost of that item actually works out to, compared to buying it here.
Yeah.
When we look, I think Marlene touched on it, but I perhaps we're kind of glossing it over. The idea of online shopping, because we're only focusing on going across into Chetumal or Melchor, but I'm thinking that a vast majority of Belizeans are now using credit cards to purchase items online.
Right.
That's still sending money out of the country, correct?
Correct.
And so
Exactly.
if we're discussing keeping the money at home, it's kind of ironic that you're doing it from home, but the money is still going out of the country. Because I know a lot of people, they're purchasing on Amazon. They go to various websites for companies that advertise products and what have you that we're very much into, either fashion brands or electronic items and stuff. And so how do we compete against that? Or how do we say, you know what, well, as opposed to purchasing something online, perhaps I can go to Mirab and get a better deal on that item. How do we...
How do you counter that argument? Really, then it's looking at how you're able to reduce prices to compete. I mean, at the end of the day, while you purchase online, there are certain levels of costs associated with that. And even if you're shipping it in, there should be some duty levels that you're paying. And then that comes out to a final price that now, when you compare that to a shopping at Mirab, then how does it compare? Because at the end of the day, it's really stretching your dollar, as you've said. Are we going to be competitive now? I think probably not, just because of the varying taxes that you're having to pay and operations, business operations.
Yeah.
You know, the other side to look at there is if you're not buying at home, which means there's no revenue being generated by the business houses. You end up with these overheads where you cut the expenses of rent and you cut the electricity. Eventually you end up having to downsize a little. And if you're not making enough, then that business eventually disappears. There's no more money coming in. There's no more taxes being paid. How do we continue to survive? We then end up in a very unhealthy economy and not able to provide for the people what they need.
You know, with online shopping, I think at least with the importation of the goods, if they're shipping it in, there's usually some taxes levied on what's coming in. But I'd imagine that perhaps the largest bleeding of resources take place with people coming through the borders, whether it's through the Mexican border, the land border, or whether it's coming through the airport. Is that a part of being able to recover the money that's been lost outside of the country?
A part of it, because remember, the tax is not 100%, so you would have already spent that portion online. The foreign currency has to go to pay that credit card. And so the funds are going out, and it is impacting then our foreign reserve to be able to pay for the importation. But that percentage then is what it is. I mean, depending on the item you're bringing in, anywhere up to 20%, in excess only if it's those sinful items.
I'm trying to recall, we've had, I think, on a few occasions where the Mexican embassy in Belize would release the numbers as to how many people went over the border. And I remember once, I think it was at least twice the population of Belize that had passed through the border.
Probably in a year.
In a year, a year.
Just recently, the long weekend in October, you had about 12,600 persons going. You know, equate $100 per person. You're talking about $1.2 million that's gone outside of the country, being spent in another economy where none of those taxes or none of those revenues come back to our country to improve anything, infrastructure, healthcare, education.
But you see how this is hard for people to accept,
right?
Because we're all
the reality
selfish.
on the ground is what it is. I mean, wages aren't increasing, cost of living is high, and so at the end of the day, it's trying to make sure that I can make ends meet.
Yeah, and to be able to spend my money on quality items. Let's use the most common goods I think brought across the border. Toilet paper. I'm always fascinated by this. Everybody's bringing a big pack of toilet paper over the border. I don't know why.
I wouldn't go as far as Chatham to purchase toilet paper.
That's you.
I know.
Stand at the border, you'll see a different story. So the thing is, because I can't understand. I mean, it's a pretty far trip for toilet paper.
That's what I'm saying.
One, we do produce locally.
Correct.
Two, the brand that is most often brought over is available locally. And so I was trying to figure out what the price difference is. And it is significant. So people do pick it up there because it's so much cheaper. So when I look at how people are spending, they're just trying to be smart spenders with their money. They get a quality item for a cheaper price, and then they bring it back home rather than getting something that is not of the same quality standards. So it also means that locally, whatever we produce, and also locally, whatever we are selling, the standards there have to be good.
Right, correct. It has to improve, and we do have quality products that are produced. Again, economies of scale may have the cost not where you'd want it to be. But the products are here and are available. So it's more looking at, again, not to harp on taxes, but if you're able to widen the base, reduce the level of the taxation, then you end up having a wider spread for the share of that cost. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, government has to always push a revenue neutral kind of conversation. So while I bring down the rate, I need to make sure that there's more that's being taxed so that it's even. But it also adds then to the contraband conversation. The reason why they're higher, there's so much contraband in parallel is because there's a higher tax. Look at the items that are actually brought in under that activity is really because the tax rates are super high. And so we create the rationale for why I would risk bringing that product because of the tax rate. Now, if everything was 5%, just showing the rate, then would it make sense for me to, one, take the trip over, but also two, if I can get it here and it's only 5%, then why would I go through the hassle of contrabanding or paralleling an item?
But you look at items like soft drinks, beer, soaps, that sort of stuff. When you see persons going over into Bortes or those other areas and they're contrabanding, indeed, those are items that ordinarily we'll be able to find here, and maybe not in that particular brand, but those are items that are readily found in country. But there seems to be an economy in and of itself off of that kind of activity, where it's difficult for persons to say, well, you know what, this is how I make my bread and butter, by bringing in items and then putting it on the black market.
There are products that are produced here that are of the same quality. Maybe the variety is what we're now working on, where you're having the larger size, like you mentioned, the sodas, which are in the larger 2-3 liter sizes now, that are produced locally that you used to go to buy over the border because it was, in your view, a better buy at the time. But if you have it now locally, why not scratch that from your list then of things that you're bringing over?
You know, it is important that we support Belizean businesses, and I think that perhaps we simply bank on the fact that perhaps customs are doing the jobs, and we don't pay attention to our own spending habits in how much we spend outside. But I have a question in terms of getting some data or research. Has the Chamber or any other entity taken the initiative to look at what are the most common goods that are being brought in from, whether it's Mexico, United States, Guatemala, wherever people are traveling from, to get an idea of what needs to be more competitive locally?
As a Chamber, I don't know that we've looked at it at that granular level. Again, coming by that information is challenging. What we get out of the various institutions like the SIB and, for example, the Customs Department are kind of these blanket labels where the drill down is where really you want to see. And then looking at what you have in your business community, the entrepreneurial side of things, to make sure that you can then select those few items, focusing on what they need, whether it is that they need a short-term tax holiday because you're starting up a new business and getting into something that is in fact available outside of the country, and focusing your energies on making sure that you can grow that to a successful level, so that that's one less thing that persons have to bring in. But the information is somewhat challenging to come by in order to be able to do that exercise.
It would be, it would just be good to know, because like I said, we know toilet paper because it's so big. You have to see it, but I don't know what else people actually go for. I mean, are they getting canned goods? Are they getting, we know detergent is another one as well. And again, I think that's a price point issue. We're just guessing what people are buying, or we can anecdotally know what our families may pick up as well.
I think each of us as consumers know, and we all have family, and we all know what they go across the border to buy. It's a matter of, I think, doing a quick basket survey to say what it is are those, that top 10 products that you're going to bring each and every time you go. Because that could also kind of help things locally if you know what products you're looking at. But even beyond looking at the practice of purchasing outside, we've seen where businesses have tried to accommodate the market. We're talking about the downtown sales that take place monthly in Belize City. There's the big November 19th weekend, which is the big shopping weekend in Belize. I know Chamber worked on getting some discounts from the business sector. What does the business sector do to try to keep people here and in their stores shopping? The discounts, they're not, I think they don't happen as often enough as the public will demand. And there are just so many other activities happening where, apart from the downtown sale, a lot of businesses now do their own little mini expos. They participate in our general expo in September. But it's kind of tailored to specific times of the year. Probably more of an ongoing discount, maybe loyalty programs. Again, there are different ways, I believe, of giving back without necessarily always having to do a price adjustment. Gifts with purchase, things that used to happen. I mean, my parents, when they were growing up, you used to go and the store, your regular corner store would show in something where they said a brata you get. Little things like those that help to offset the cost of living, I think can work without necessarily always going to price. I think that's kind of the arena we've gotten into, where if I'm not getting it in price, then I don't consider it.
But I think it speaks of the economics of the individuals who are purchasing. I mean, Marcello, you might give me a free plastic bottle, but I really just want to spend less money so I can buy more, because I have kids and families and gifts to buy and all these things that are equally important. So it is ultimately going to be about price. But I know you represent the business sector, and you have expenses, you have wages to pay, and all these things. So what is the middle ground on something like this?
I think giving up of something that's then a conceived value for you. So instead of giving you a cup, you may not need, you have 6 cups and you keep collecting them from everybody who's giving them, but maybe giving you back in product. Right? So you have, you're buying a basket of grocery and I throw in an extra can something. Something that's an everyday use. An evaporated milk, a canned meat, thing of that sort. To then add value, but it's actually helping you to then technically pay less, because you're getting an item technically for free that you will definitely utilize and has a value to you, as opposed to necessarily the cup.
And looking at how the Christmas is faring off so far, the Christmas season is faring off for the business community, how are things going?
I think it's going well. I mean, since the November 19th Black Friday, there's a lot of momentum, a lot of movement, and depending on the type of business you're in, this time of the year normally for a lot of businesses kind of help you to accumulate enough to take you through the next year. So you'll see a lot of offers, a lot of discounts, because this is when a lot of the businesses make the bulk of their money to be able to sustain themselves for the next year.
And I mean, I think that one of the things that we do, that there was that campaign, Buying Belize, Build Belize, many years ago. I don't know if you still use that slogan, but it is kind of just getting the message out to the everyday shopper and saying, yes, you may be able to save a few extra dollars if you go online or if you go across the border, but also consider the investment you make at home.
Right.
How do you remove just the business sector hat and talk to everyday Belizeans and say that?
You have to build your country. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever you spend here goes back into making sure that you have good health care, good roads, better education. So the social things that are important, because at the end of the day, stretching your dollar is one thing, but there are still the things that you live here and need to use and the services that you need to get.
Yeah.
So getting that to the level that it needs to be and the quality level that it needs to be is going to be dependent on us making sure that we're spending at home to be able to provide to that. Because all the 1.2 million we do over the border and just in one weekend, none of those dollars come back to this economy to improve anything. So that's lost money that never gets recovered.
All right. Good reminder to all of us, and we really appreciate you coming in to share this information with us. It's not always a popular conversation that people like to hear, but it is something that we do need to be reminded of. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a break now. When we come back, we are going to shift to a conversation about mental health, and we'll be talking about social anxiety. So please stay tuned.